There is a moment that hurts quietly. It's when you're talking, but you can feel it. They're hearing your voice, but they're not really listening. Their eyes drift. Their phone lights up. Their answers come too fast. You stop mid-sentence and pretend you finished your thought, because something in you realizes your words no longer land the way they used to. This doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly. First, they interrupt more. Then they change the subject. Then they respond without really absorbing what you said. And eventually, you start choosing silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because it hurts to speak and feel invisible at the same time. You don't want attention. You don't want to be dramatic. You just want to feel that your words still matter, that you still matter. Being unheard doesn't just quiet your voice. It slowly teaches your heart to stop reaching out. 1. When you realize your voice is no longer invited. At first, you try not to notice it. You tell yourself you're imagining things, that people are just busy, that times have changed. So you keep talking the way you always did. You share a thought, a memory, a concern. And they nod, they smile. They say, uh-huh. But something feels off. They don't ask follow-up questions anymore. They don't pause to consider your words. They respond before you've even finished. And slowly, you begin to feel it. Your voice has become background noise. You're still included in the conversation, but not truly invited into it. What hurts isn't disagreement. It isn't even being wrong. It's being bypassed. You start noticing patterns. When you speak, the room keeps moving. When others speak, the room listens. Your stories get shortened. Your thoughts get summarized by someone else. Your concerns get brushed away with, "It'll be fine." And you learn something quietly. Your words are no longer needed to move the conversation forward, so you adapt. You speak less. You simplify your thoughts. You let things go unsaid. Not because you don't care, but because caring out loud no longer feels safe. This is how silence begins, not suddenly, but as a response to being repeatedly unheard. You didn't lose your voice. You learned to protect it from being ignored. 2. Why this happens. More often as you get older. This isn't your imagination. Being unheard becomes more common as you grow older. Not because your words lose value, but because the world around you changes the way it listens. Life speeds up for them. It slows down for you. Their attention is divided. Yours has learned to stay present. They juggle screens, schedules, pressure, noise. You speak from experience, from memory, from reflection. And somehow, those two rhythms stop matching. You notice it when advice is brushed aside before it's fully heard. When stories from your past are treated like interruptions instead of wisdom. When your concerns are met with, "It's different now," as if what you've lived through no longer applies. You're not being ignored out of cruelty. You're being overlooked in a culture that values speed over depth, newness over understanding, answers over listening. And age quietly shifts how people see you. They assume you won't understand. They assume you'll worry too much. They assume your perspective is outdated. So they stop asking. And when no one asks, your voice begins to feel unnecessary. That's when the pain deepens. Because what hurts most isn't losing arguments. It's losing relevance. You're still thinking, still noticing, still feeling deeply. But the space for your voice has grown smaller without anyone ever saying why. You're not unheard because you have less to offer. You're unheard because the world forgot how to slow down and listen. 3. What it does to you when you're repeatedly unheard. Being unheard doesn't just end a conversation. It slowly changes you. At first, you try harder. You explain more clearly. You choose your words carefully. You tell yourself, "Maybe I didn't say it right." But when the pattern continues, something inside you starts to close. You stop sharing certain thoughts, not because they're unimportant, but because it hurts to offer them and watch them fall flat. You begin editing yourself in real time. You shorten stories. You skip details. You avoid topics that once mattered to you. And without realizing it, you start disappearing from conversations that still include your body. This kind of silence is not peaceful. It's protective. It's your heart learning that speaking no longer brings connection, only disappointment. Over time, being unheard creates doubt. You question your judgment. You second-guess your feelings. You wonder if you're overreacting or simply outdated. And that doubt becomes exhausting because you're not asking to be right. You're not asking to control the conversation. You're asking for something much simpler: to be considered, to be paused for, to be met with presence. When that doesn't happen, your confidence doesn't shatter loudly. It erodes quietly. And one day, you notice you've become quieter. Not because you have nothing to say, but because it no longer feels safe to say it out loud. Silence isn't always a choice. Sometimes it's what grows after your voice has been ignored too many times. 4. When being unheard makes you question your worth. After a while, being unheard stops feeling like a communication problem. It starts to feel personal. You don't say this out loud, but something inside you begins to wonder, do my thoughts still matter? Am I saying things no one needs anymore? Have I become someone people tolerate rather than value? These questions don't come from insecurity. They come from repetition, from speaking into rooms that don't pause, from sharing concerns that get dismissed, from offering experience that gets brushed aside. And slowly, your sense of worth begins to shift, not because you believe you have nothing to offer, but because the world stops responding as if you do. You notice how quickly people move on after you speak, how rarely your words change the direction of a conversation, how often your input is acknowledged but not absorbed. This creates a quiet erosion. You begin to step back before you're pushed. You withdraw before rejection happens again, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. And the hardest part is this: you still care deeply. You still notice things others miss. You still hold insights shaped by years of living. But without a place to put those thoughts, they turn inward. And when wisdom has nowhere to land, it starts to feel like a burden instead of a gift. Being unheard doesn't make you less valuable. It just makes you feel invisible in a world that forgot how much you carry inside. 5. Why you slowly choose silence instead of speaking. Eventually, you stop trying to be heard. Not all at once, not dramatically. You just begin choosing silence because it feels safer than disappointment. You notice how much energy it takes to speak and not be met, to explain and be brushed aside, to share and feel invisible. So you adapt. You listen more than you talk. You nod instead of disagreeing. You keep thoughts to yourself even when they matter. This isn't withdrawal, it's protection. Silence becomes a way to avoid the small wounds that come from being overlooked. You tell yourself it's easier this way, that there's no point repeating yourself. That peace is better than frustration. But this silence comes at a cost, because inside, your thoughts don't disappear. They pile up. They circle back at night. They grow heavier the longer they have nowhere to go. And loneliness deepens, not because you're alone, but because you're unseen even when you're present. You miss the feeling of being met mid-thought, of someone pausing just to hear you finish, of knowing your words could still shift a moment. Choosing silence protects you from immediate pain, but over time, it can make you feel as if you no longer exist in the conversations around you. Micro-hook. You didn't stop speaking because you had nothing to say. You stopped because being unheard hurt too much. 6. How to stay connected without losing yourself. At some point, you realize that staying silent has protected you, but it has also made you smaller. So the question becomes not how to make others listen, but how to stay connected without disappearing. This doesn't start with confrontation. It starts with permission. Permission to notice when something matters to you. Permission to pause instead of swallowing your words immediately. Permission to speak, not louder, but truer. You don't need to explain everything. You don't need to justify your feelings. You don't need to win attention. Sometimes it's enough to say one sentence, slowly, calmly, without apology, and then stop. Not to force a response, but to give your words a place to land. You also learn that not every space is safe for your voice. That's not failure, that's wisdom. So you begin choosing where to speak and where to keep your thoughts close. You look for moments where someone pauses, where someone looks at you instead of past you. Those moments still exist. And when you find them, you let yourself be heard there, even if it's only a little at first. You're not trying to reclaim the past. You're learning how to remain present without erasing yourself. Being heard doesn't always mean being listened to by everyone. Sometimes it means choosing not to disappear, even when the room moves on. 7. Finding your worth. Beyond being heard. There comes a moment when you stop chasing the sound of your own voice. Not because you've given up, but because you've learned something deeper. Your worth does not disappear just because the room doesn't quiet down for you. For a long time, being heard felt like proof that you mattered, that your thoughts had weight, that your presence made a difference. So when listening faded, it felt like you were fading too. But that connection between being heard and being valuable was never the truth. It was simply what you learned in relationships that no longer fit the world you're in. Your value has always lived somewhere else, in the care you've given, in the patterns you notice, in the steadiness you bring, in the way you listen, even when no one returns the favor. You begin to realize that not every meaningful life is loud. Some lives are quiet and still deeply impactful. You don't need an audience to be significant. You don't need constant acknowledgement to be real. And when you stop measuring yourself by how often others listen, something loosens inside you. You speak when it matters. You stay silent when it doesn't. Not out of fear, but out of choice. And that choice brings back a sense of dignity no one can interrupt. Being unheard does not make you small. It reveals a world that forgot how to listen, not a life that lost its value. 8. A message for the voice that was never meant to disappear. If you've felt unheard for a long time, please let this land gently. You were never meant to disappear. Your voice didn't lose its value just because fewer people paused to hear it. You didn't become irrelevant, you didn't grow outdated, and you didn't imagine the pain of being overlooked. You adapted. You learned to survive in quieter ways. You learned when to speak and when to protect yourself. That wasn't weakness. That was intelligence. That was care. And even in silence, your life continued to matter. You noticed things others rushed past. You felt what others avoided. You held space, even when no one held it for you. That kind of presence doesn't vanish. It settles deeper. You are allowed to speak again. Not to prove yourself, not to compete with noise, but to honor what still lives inside you. And you are allowed to stay quiet. Not because you were pushed there, but because your worth no longer depends on being acknowledged. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to demand attention. Your life has weight even when the room doesn't stop. And if no one has said this to you lately, let this be the moment you hear it clearly. You matter. Your voice matters. And it was never meant to fade.